Snuck up on you a little bit, didn't I? Hey, this is William F. DeVault, the U.S. National Beat Poet Laureate Emeritus, and the romantic poet of the internet. And I've been called a few other things, some of them unprintable, some of them not. And I promised that this week I would do a 1 hour reading. I don't like doing 3 to 5 minute readings. I really don't. One does not applaud a tenor for clearing his throat. Applaud the tenor for clearing his throat, as said by Madame de Mathieu in Liaisons Dangereuses. You have to build something. And what I built today is chaos. Originally, I had great plans of doing this whole elaborate show and the whole bit, and then I went, you know what? No, I'm going to grab my 4 most recent books, the 4 hardbacks, and going to do a selection from each of them in order to fill the hour and to give you some sense of what's there. Some of these will be poems you've heard before. Some of these will be poems I don't think you have. And some of these will be ones that people have particularly asked me to read. The first one I will begin with is from Out of Selected Poems and Passions, 1972 to 2011. And it's called I Should Have Been Immortal. Lying in fields of orchids, I dream of roses. There is not, there will not be, there cannot be enough time to taste all the wines. I should have been immortal. The wind blows warm when I crave the ice, the pie is cut, but I want no slice of it. And the cake I need has been served all around. I have sailed the sun and touched the moon and fallen to earth in death's calling. But where are the ancients? I must know. I will go to see their tombs, for I am too late, or they passed too soon. Theirs will be my destiny too, to dream of fires that shall not burn in my earth time, to carve my name on a sapling, and not live to see the process spread my words to gargantuan proportions. Yet security beckons. There is a sort of pleasure in knowing that death waits around a farther hill, and that you will be blessed by its frostbound visitation. But I should have been. I could have been. I would have been immortal. There just isn't enough time for the roses. I wrote this poem when I was 18 years old. I had a really blossoming period for about a year or two, right after I discovered true romance. And I wrote 4 or 5 of the fundamental works in my catalog, this being one of them. And it's funny, the line, to carve my name on a sapling and not live to see the process spread my words to gargantuan proportions. I wrote that almost 50 years ago. So if I carved that on a sapling 50 years ago, it would probably be pretty big by now. So I defeated my own prophecy. I had a friend named Dolores who was something of a train wreck. She had been through a lot of crap as a young woman. And I combined her and a woman I was involved with at the time who had also been through a lot of really negative things. And this poem came out of it. It's called Satin Scars. Like satin scars on scaly skin, my words exceed me. Memory fails and I am transient, but my soul can see beyond the farthest thunder of the birth of time. The dance proceeds at such a speed I cannot end this crime. For all my cunning and fire, I am a frail mortal. I bend in the wind and cry in the dark and withdraw, a bloodied friend betrayed by self and shame. The game contorts and fades. It laughs a Manson laugh in the face of the decades that robbed me, that raped you and stole my God, the dance I once began. I cannot begin to prod my mind for the simplest steps. Memory fails and I am a cipher, a riddle that no one laughs at, a purpose none would die for. But even in the grayest light, I find the answer. The time was not for me. I stole it out of love and fear, a crime so hideous, but so human. There is much to forget and forgive. To deny that is to lie. And yet, for all our sins, we live. No, you guys know those two poems too well. I'm going to throw you guys some curves tonight. And nothing from the Golden Heart cycles. Cycle 6, cycle 7, and on we go. The average book I've been putting out recently is a little over 200 poems, which means you take those 4 books together, we've got about 800 poems. And although there are a handful of overlaps, particularly among the first 2 volumes, they're pretty much unto themselves, and each carries their own particular flavor, which is why I chose the spectrum for the different colors. This next poem came from a line that was suggested to me from my good friend Jan Innes. She was the editor of my first book, and she made reference to a glass rose, and I thought, wow, that's an interesting image. So I wrote this poem. It's called Glass Roses, surprisingly enough. Conceive of a flower like no other. No color, but the curving clarity, the photic charity of crystalline silence. Past the rainbow's violence, a white fragrance, white as a virgin's first kiss, or the lost heartbeat I gave over to the universe when first we met. When first I set my sails for a new horizon, passion and pride put down and sacrificed to the gods of love, to the holders of dreams, to the bearers of my gift, to wings that take their lift from the winds of sorrow. A meadow of perfect blossoms, refracting the light you give me onto a page of history and hope. My brother, the night, takes me, and I am not tomorrow anymore, but my words endure, pure as a field of glass roses, row upon perfect chaotic row, not discovered in this lifetime, in this incarnation, but they are out there. This poem I love on several levels. First off, it was to Jan Innes, and she loved it. Second off, there's a lot of concepts in here that brush against other poems of mine. When first I set my sails for a new horizon, the refracting of light being given to the poet to put on the page. I believe the poet is not a creator. The poet is a lens. Light shines upon him or her, and then they refract it onto the page. We are not creators. We are manipulators of light. And each of us has our own special spectrum and refraction that affects what we write and how we write it. I see Chris Vanoy is on watching. Hi, Chris. Chris is a remarkable poet from California, and love him to death. I'm going to read you a poem you may have heard from me before. It's a little, it's got a little bit of a weird history. I wrote it several years ago, and some people refer to it as the 50th poem of the Golden Heart cycles, which is total bullshit because Golden Heart cycles is self-contained with 49. But it is really written about the same person. It's called The Patchwork Skirt of My Love, and I went ahead and I submitted it someplace. I don't remember where. I don't keep track of my credits that much. I'm sorry. There are poets who carry around a scrapbook of every time a newspaper included their name in a line of 26 people who used the open mic at Bob's Bar and Grill. That's not me. I write the poems. After that, they have their own life. But I wrote this piece, submitted it somewhere, and somehow it ended up nominated for Poem of the Year by the Predators and Editors online poll. And it didn't win that year. The next year, We Owe Debt to Memory won. But the weird thing about this poem, the psycho thing about this poem perhaps, is the first place I submitted it was to a magazine that an old girlfriend of mine had been the editor of, and she had recently left. And they had printed several of my poems. And I got it back from them saying, we're sorry, you're too much of a obscurantist. She had an issue with my reference to brandy wine in the poem as being too obscure for your average reader, which tells me that their readers were morons. And some audiences just don't deserve the good stuff. But anyway, this song. I actually know a place that put this to music. This poem is called The Patchwork Skirt of My Love, and the main image of it, comes from a time when I was at college, and I was sitting in a hallway waiting for a class to start. And this very attractive red-haired young woman came down the hall wearing a patchwork skirt, and sat down almost directly across from me, got a bag of cinnamon red hearts out of her purse and began to eat them. And that image just burned into my brain. I wrote 3 or 4 poems about it, but this is the only one that survived with that image because the other ones were crap. And as most of you know, about 90% of everything I write goes in the toilet. No, not that way. I'm not Donald Trump. Anyway, The Patchwork Skirt of My Love. The sound of soft fingertips across the strings of a lute, strumming the memories, humming the melody of life, and I am lost in the possibilities of your presence. Pleasant peasant prayers that lead to the summit of the mountain in the distance, where legends reign. Kings cannot know this brandy wine, princes pass perplexed, and all the bishops seem ignorant of the nature of God when their ignorance of the crux of creation is displayed, paraded in the sudden dance of a smiling child by the fire, and I am lost in the reverent reveries of this revelation. Play for me that melody, the one you tried to teach me, you tried to reach me with when I despaired of lost love, and the angels and fairies all seemed annoying pinpoints that pricked and sticked and stole the moment that was mine. And you came to me, barefoot and arrogant, like a poet. That line's loaded, and I'm not going to explain it. And the fires swam into the sky, and I was reborn, torn to pieces and reassembled like a patchwork skirt to brush your bare legs in the summer heat, and to defeat the angry winds that would come down from the mountains, mounting the horses of hoarfrost to charge your charms. I live now, in more than just abstract recollections of a score of forgetful lovers, who would not give me second thought were it not for the trinkets of my words they wear as bright badges, as they tell their tales of the pale blue moon of memory, and they don't wear the patchwork skirt of my love, or play the lute. I like that one. If you don't like it, that's fine. You're not supposed to like everything I write, and I'm not supposed to like everything I write. It always bugs me, though, when a poem becomes really popular, and I don't like it. I wrote it, but on second, third reading, I don't like it, but unfortunately by that time, someone's found it and gone, oh, I really like this poem. You won't find those poems mostly in these books. I don't write about them anymore, and I'm not even going to name them, because then I'll have somebody going, but that was my favorite. Well, guess what? I'm the poet. Go write your own poems. I wrote this next piece. If you've ever heard it before, you've heard it with rock music behind it, because it was written as lyrics for a rock song that I did with GarageBand with a little help from my friends in the Gods of Love. And it's called The Wild and Defiled Along the Way. I'll light the sky to show you why. The stars are not my choosing. Retread my head, get back in bed, and cull a victory from the losing. You know, I know when I should go. I don't need another creature feature teacher. Just bring your heart and play your part. We'll figure out the details in the future. Ain't got no plan. It's not who I am, and not who I want to be anyway. Adjust, adapt to every slap, from the wild and defiled along the way. I want to believe that you won't leave, and in something more electric than the thunder. The heat, the beat of hearts complete. Something to get on, or in, or under. If you've got the will, I've got the way. Still, you may want to check all your options. If you walk on in and let this begin, don't blame me for the repercussions. Ain't got no plan. Not who I am, and not who I want to be anyway. Adjust, adapt to every slap, from the wild and defiled along the way. I really didn't like my recording of it, but it's out there. I put a lot of things out that I'm not a big fan of, just because I want to. No, you all know that one, and you all know that one. Damn, I've read too many of these in public up till now. I'm not going to do Love is a Howling Beast. I don't care. If Eric, if you're out there, sorry, I'm not doing Love is a Howling Beast tonight. Do I want to do this one? Yes. I've had some epic romances that crashed and burned with hypergolic madness. I mean, just... And I should have known in the beginning. But I've always had a habit, well, not always, but a lot of the time had the habit of falling for women who are damaged. And they see me as someone who could fix the damage. I'm really not that good. I really can't fix everybody's problems. But I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. And after a particularly brutal flame out, I won't name the name Mary Kate, but this is called In the Memory of Lovers. Oh, good, I get to go deep. Perhaps it is the season to place my faith again in the joy and the passion of a woman's deep heart, to offer up my honor, my hunger, and my heart to the fates for my part, as a sacrifice to their whims. I have not lost a step on this road of dark corners, where whispers are murder and rewards are quite rare. But I can't see my failing to see this through till morning replaces a voice warning of the shadows that linger. In the moment she ponders, there's a bittersweet venom on the kiss of a woman, to the light with the dark. On the lips of an angel I have tasted redemption, and sad desecration when she ponders too long. Or when choosing unwisely, not knowing or caring, her shallows breed suffering, and the currents then fail. I cannot stand for her if she doesn't come bearing, or at least shout a warning when the demons abound. On the black bricked road on which I shall yet wander, I will, in truth, wonder what is under my tread. I shall seek a soft solace, but not a surrender. I will take no pretender again to my bed. I will drink my new wine in the memory of lovers. Each angel who hovers will light a new light. Be she destiny incarnate, or yet another missed moment, I shall keep to this torment, undefeated through the night. Two little pieces I'd like to bring up here. At one point in here I talk about the black bricked road. You will find in my later poems I refer to it. And you can figure it out pretty much by the context in which it's spoken of. And there was one other one, but I don't remember what it was. I was thinking at the time, hey, I should stop and mention this. Screw it. Let's get on with this. What time is it? I don't want to use up all my time on one book. Ooh. I like this one. I probably won't do it justice because it really needs a scale. If you ever saw the movie Still Crazy, when the band Strange Fruit is making a comeback, they find that working out in clubs just isn't working for them because they need scale. They need scale of a big stage and lights and explosions and the whole bit. Well, this poem kind of screams for me to be yelling and waving my arms and fires going on in the background. But we'll try and get by with just a little inflection. It's called Rise. Rise, dreaming from the ashes, envisioning futures cut in gashes from the ruddy walls of faded memory, made a prison of the amory where once we lay, playful lovers, lost in the costless sins of passion. Rise, gleaming from the ashes, quicksilver pouring from stored caches of life and beauty, a rainbow of grays playing on a wall of sacred sapphires, sprays of baby's breath and black roses, chosen for their meaning, not their beauty. Rise, steaming from the ashes, a pinch of light and a saline flash merging into a purging potion of healing, sending you crashing in crested waves of feeling that you had peeled, congealed, sealed, and concealed like mulberry jam against an infinite winter's cold. Rise, 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 damn you, rise. Rise screaming from the ashes, ascendant precedent for a flame tongue's lash, to part skies and lies and thighs, and try as I might, I could see no further than this event horizon. Night as a beacon for the flight from photic silence, the violence of the cold stone of mortality. I got excited about something. Okay, I'm going to pick one more. Wow. There's too many here. I should have just written one poem and polished it, but I don't believe in polishing poetry. To me, poetry is like photography. You take a picture. If it's not good, you take another picture. You don't take it to Photoshop and shift the colors and restructure it. That's no longer a photo. It's no longer a capturing of an instant. And to me, that's very, very essential to poetry. I'm going to end this volume with a fairly lighthearted poem called Vodka and Condoms. You've probably heard it before. There's a recording of it in my podcast. In the background, you can hear a young woman going, "Bring vodka and condoms." That's actually the woman who inspired this poem. Yeah, Jazz, I'm ratting on you a little bit. We're still friends. Several years ago, I was living in either Virginia or West Virginia, and we were talking regularly on the phone, and we had known each other a couple of years before in California. We'd never gotten together. Why? I don't know. I guess I'm just stupid. Because she was wonderful. Still is, as far as I can tell. And we were talking one day. I said, I'll have to come out there and visit sometime. And she said, well, when you do, bring vodka and condoms. And I went, ding, that's a poem. Bring vodka and condoms, she said. I heard her say it in a sotto voce whisper, rough with fear and hunger, like a cat in heat in a cage, wanting something she couldn't ask for in simpler terms, because the words had sharp edges, nothing more than someone to tell her what is expected of her between the courses of life, when she wants to be wanted, as we all do, under the influence of vodka and condoms. That's my readings from Selected Poems and Passions. I think the wording will appear backwards on your screen. Don't worry about it. I was pleased with this book. If you go looking for it someplace, the hardback has an orange cover. The softback has a blue cover. That's the only time I've done that. Changed the colors for the soft cover. And I plan to fix that sometime in the near future. The next book we're going to go to is called Quintessence. Now, quintessence, the word itself, has a history in my psychohistory. I was engaged to a woman who became a therapist. And when she was in graduate school, we broke up. And it was a rather messy breakup. And I did, however, agree to let her hypnotize me. She did, and I didn't believe it would work. It worked. And I learned a lot of things about myself. And at one point, one of the very deepest elements of me gave 5 words. And I'm not going to recite them here. If you can find them in my writings, great. But those are kind of like the key to my mind, such as it is. And that's why I named this book Quintessence. And that's why I'm digging through here for a few poems. And, oh, there we go. I'm going to do something I don't think I've ever done. I'm going to do a couple of the poems from when I was living in Venice. I miss Venice Beach. Venice Beach was amazing. Now it's extremely expensive to live there, according to latest reports, and according to the latest ice flow meltings in Antarctica within the next 20 years, it will be underwater. So much for that. But during that time, I experimented with forms. I had some interesting relationships. And I'll give you a little background on a few of them as I read some of these poems. I'll start with Damascus Movement 3. I did a series of poems called Damascus. St. Paul on the road to Damascus was struck blind and had a vision of Jesus. And it is during that time that he changed and went from Saul of Tarsus, professional assassin, to St. Paul. I even actually wrote a short story where it was a false conversion, and he was doing it so he could affect the Christian philosophy to keep it from destroying Rome. But you'll just have to read that when it comes out. But at the time, I was involved with a woman who I thought, this will finally get my life straight. This will finally get my life straight. Not a prayer. But these poems, in many ways, reflect my hopes at the time. I am not a hopeless romantic, I'm a hopeful romantic, to quote Charity Hope Valentine in Sweet Charity. This is Damascus Movement 3. Aphrodite does not barter her beauty for hollow promise. Wisdom girds glib eloquences in a veil of truth, the sooth that soothes us, like the blood of aloe fresh cut from a garden, where we swore we would never walk again. Jasmine. A thought slides like electric lovers across a sea of tranquility, where the dust is kicked skyward by the blue flames and boots of the explorers. I awaken from the dream. Sightless, paralyzed, the cold catalepsy illustrating the fear of death I had forgotten. But there, in an incandescence in the darkness, and for once I sink back to sleep, aware of God and cognizant of the pattern in the tapestry, as I await Rome, content that Damascus was no illusion that time. This second poem I'm going to read, I wrote probably within a day or two of that one. She was blonde, quite blonde, in many senses of the word. I'm sorry. Sometimes I told her hair reminded me of frozen lemons. And so I wrote a poem called Sparks Like Frozen Lemons. Caught at first glance, a chance attraction, like a wanderer between stars caught in the gravity well of your incandescent eyes. A sweet smell that draws me in. 7 powers invoked to choke my last struggles, a vanity to guard a sanity long lost, the cost of a vagabond heart. Sparks struck, the kindling catches, and it matches the fires sweeping across the dry grass of a solitary soul, led by the winds of dreams returning like the dragons on the horizon. In the first part of the second stanza, I make reference to 7 powers. When I first met her, we were by accident seated next to each other on a plane, and I couldn't identify her cologne or perfume, and I'm pretty good with women's cologne and perfume. And I said, what is that? I don't recognize it. She said, oh, that's 7 powers. It's an essential oil you can get at a apothecary. So that was kind of an inside joke for us. Just before I got involved with her, I had met a young protege who I refer to as the Truth. And we bartered whether to be more than mentor and protege. Actually, I think she was more interested in us becoming more than mentor and protege than I was, because I was concerned about the age difference. But I wrote this poem, Dram, about it. The smallest unit, beauty and terror in trace amounts, it counts for little to our senses, but its impact is immeasurable, for it is undetectable and thus gets past our guards. Shards of the fractured crystal heart of a forgotten dragon, flechettes that forget nothing, for they are soulless, like so many lovers. But I have seen your fire, even banked it burns on, and I will warm myself one day, when annotations are again allowed in the dreams of the waking dead. Until then, let us drink our drinks of trace elements, and I will teach you the alchemy of the heart. Boy, did that relationship blow up. But these are things that happen, you know? This is one of the most important poems I ever wrote. I wrote it in 1979. For 5 years, I was dating an absolutely wonderful woman, the woman who became a therapist. And one evening, while she was in graduate school, we were talking on the phone, and she asked me to give up this poetry stuff. She said, poetry will never make money. You'll die old and bitter. Well, I'm old, not bitter yet. And I don't want the man who I love to get old, to feel that way. I don't want to see you like that. So I thought for about 3 days, and I wrote this poem. And I said, I called her on a night that I didn't normally call. Back then, telephone calls were very expensive. We were running up a few $100s worth of phone bills every month, just talking. But anyway, and they weren't private either, because the one phone in my parents' house, who I still lived with at the time, was in the kitchen. So everybody could hear my side of the conversation. Really fun. Tough to carry on a romance that way. This poem is called Threnody, which is a poem about death. 4 times now past, 3/17/1971. That's right, people, 43 years ago. The loom of doom had woven us together, we who are anathema to reason. The ending of a season of hope. I would not be able to cope if not for you. My dreams would be sterile and cracked. My bags are packed. I despise the coldness that wraps us in its cloak. I choke back the lacrimal emissions. Our positions are self-revealing. Big boys do not cry, but they can die. The feast is done, the beast is gone and left us. So alone we listen to the breeze. The thief flees and leaves us to measure the loss. I cannot, shall not, dare not count this the end. Never was there such a friend. Call upon me, fall upon me in times of pain. More remains than may be acknowledged in this moment. The seed still lives, but the shoots are now trimmed to encourage proper growth. As you might predict, everything went south after that. 15 years ago, the man she eventually married passed away. She didn't even flag me for me to say, I'm sorry. I wrote about that actually in another poem, which I might read a little bit later. I'm going to pick a poem that I don't recognize by its title right away. And that way, I'll get to surprise myself on this reading. Fair enough? Fair enough. Wow, I got too many poems. I need to cut this down to about 5. Maybe I should just sell the rest. Amuse yourself for 30 seconds. I want to read that. That gives away too much, you know? You guys really don't deserve that. Here we go. Give you a little homework assignment. Look up Erato. E-R-A-T-O. It's one of the muses. Because that informs this poem, which is called Erato Beats Her Children. A little different. Erato beats her children. Bragi takes to drink. And within the dragon's den, I don't know what to think. The shadows are upon me, they smile in black and red. There is no solace left to me, not even in my bed. Erato beats her children, Bragi takes to drink. And within the dragon's den, I don't know what to think. The night once white is graying, tarnish takes its toll, and hungry critters praying find their victuals in my soul. Erato beats her children, Bragi takes to drink. And within the dragon's den, I don't know what to think. Calliope and Karnak, a leprosy abounds, more final than a heart attack, and full of silent sounds. Erato beats her children, Bragi takes to drink. And within the dragon's den, I don't know what to think. That's the end of that book. Quintessence. Next, we get to the book that, surprising to me, is all new poems, and is my most popular book so far. Maybe I shouldn't show the old poems. This one is called Tachyon. For those of you who do not know what a tachyon is, and I'm sure someone will argue with me on this, a tachyon is a theoretical particle that travels faster than light. In fact, it has to travel faster than light. When it slows down towards the speed of light, it gains mass, infinite mass, just as regular particles, as they approach the speed of light, gain infinite mass. And I wrote it right after my brother died, my brother Robert. First person I ever had a nightmare about, who we battled egos throughout growing up, but we were two very different people, and I loved him very deeply. And I wrote a poem taking the tachyon metaphor, and I'll read that poem to you now. This is one you may have heard from me before. It's called For My Brother as He Accelerates. There are no more mysteries for you. The sky is white, and the night is a dimly remembered joke. Truth is at last obvious, and pain is an abstract concept. Afterlife is the all that was held back by the shadows. The memories are there, but less relevant than expected. As you find, the frame is not as Sunday school prestidigitation, but words that dissolve like sugar cubes in an April rain, plainly sweet, but pure and sure of the vision expanded. I envy you. Your awareness and the peace of release, beyond any numbing drink or the stink of sorrows borrowed to make you feel less than you were, but more than you imagined as you emerge, wings formed. The caterpillars mourn their brethren, heathens of the ascension, as the pretension stands as hobbling prevention of freedoms we are heir to. And they wonder why I smiled at your funeral. The mind without the biochemical bounds that inhibit us. There are no more mysteries for you. The sky is white and the night is a dimly remembered joke. Truth is, at last, obvious, and pain is an abstract concept. Afterlife is the all that was held back by the shadows. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, Robert, I hope you're having a blast. I read that poem at his funeral. I have a history of not being inappropriate, but being vocal at the funerals of those I love. My father, my mother, and my older brother all died within the last 10 years. And I was about the only first-level relative who spoke at their funerals. And it was an experience. And I told anecdotes designed to make the crowd laugh. And they laughed. And made everybody remember what we liked about these people. To me, death is you accelerate. You accelerate away, such that other people cannot catch you, cannot perceive you. You're gone. But you still are. So hang tight to that, people. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not in a hurry to get there because there's a lot I have to get done here. A lot of people I still have to do stuff for, or two. No, not two. Not a vengeful sort. But I'm not scared of it. I don't like pain, but death's okay. Now, here's a poem that ties a little bit into that, a little bit into something I said earlier about that psychologist I was involved with, that therapist I was involved with. I wrote this poem based on several different things I'd observed or thought of, but one is about the death of her husband, and it's only a couple lines in there. And it's called Resurrect. Laying down a beating where I'd been eating crow. The blows are soft flesh on shattered sapphire. Too many business cards from timid MFAs, mediocrities polluting Apollonian streams of consciousness. I am sorry your husband died. I acknowledge that you loved him, and he you, and I am grateful you found joy to your own side of the pillars of Heracles. The fates did not hate us, but allowed us to stumble in blind bindings until we crumbled under the weight of our best pretensions, cornbread corners to the hollow plates of desire. I was unaware of the demon I found and bound only with your persistent assistance. Born of dragons and chained in cinnabar and pitchblende, pitchfork tongue and the dung of desecration, left in the garden. He calls for you from within his cell, where I starve him with distractions and abstractions while awaiting the resurrection in a reinvented winter that comes for us all, calling us liars as the fires fade and we are paid up beyond the end of the stay we had envisioned when we bought the condoms. The halls and walls are as I envisioned them described in the Romantic's whispers, using words unheard in the most ancient places where the Greek girl said I would find redemption. She was wrong, but drunk at the time, and I do not lay with the mysteries of Dionysius. Fire, fire. Fire, inspired desire conspire with the smaller mind, blinded by a scent of honeysuckle and the night-blooming jasmine, reeling at the feeling of a greater death of self beyond logic, and the toxic remembrances that are mangled and tangled. I gave up science and the truth of numbers when I found out that I would always be bound by lesser minds, finding no freedom to discover, to uncover the essence of this transient life. There you go. That's something to chew on. Sometime read it. You can probably find it out on the web, or buy a book, blast you, and read it. See what you find out in it. There's a lot there. And no, I'm not admitting to who the Greek girl was. I know who she was, but I'm not telling you. So there. This is a poem I wrote a little while back for a celebration of Beat on the web. As I mentioned, I'm the U.S. National Beat Poet Laureate Emeritus. That's too long of a title. They need to give me a simple title like God or Village Idiot. But I'll take it and run with it. I've got the plaque sitting up on my wall. This is called The Revolution Will Be Digitized and Shown on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you will find 8 billion, it seems, recordings of people reading poetry. Some of it bad poetry, some of it bad readings, some of it both. There are some good things out there. I'm not a great reader. I'm a competent reader. I'm not a great reader. I'm a very good poet, but not a very good reader. But everybody nowadays who's been able to type 3 words together calls themselves a poet and puts out a chapbook, which floods the market to a ridiculous extent. But anyway, this is a little bit about my religion, which is poetry. No, I don't worship poetry, but poetry is the way I connect with God and the way God communicates to me. My twain religions, although I'm a stated Quaker, are poetry and love. And since I have intentionally deprived myself largely over the last several years of love, don't worry, I'm coming back, people. Beware. Poetry has taken more center stage in my life. Again, the revolution will be digitized and shown on YouTube. The digital renaissance kicked off about 25 years ago. Words and images spinning out of control around the world. My Panther cycles have been read on every continent. My poem, A Touch of Heather, has been banned in a Catholic girls' high school in Dundalk, Ireland. Half of the women I have said I love you to in my poetry are continents away. Romance is only part of the whole, though. The essence, the zen, is communication. Mediocrity, often, ironically, hidden by sound and fury and Photoshop. In the beginning is the Word, in the end is the Word. And that still small voice that spoke to Elijah is still the word on the page that outlives the theatrics and sometimes builds a legacy. For poetry, like God, is not in the wind, the earthquake, the fire. It is in the still small voice penetrating our minds, our souls, our understanding, with trippingly excellent words and allegories bent and spent against our defenses and pretenses. Quoted, sugar-coated, Shelley, Shakespeare, and Byron, my brother in practice, do not survive their flesh because of a dog and pony show, but because the words matter. Now we stand on a precipice. Western civilization teeters and totters and slaughters shepherds in Afghanistan and black men in Wisconsin because our bullets hit harder than words. But poetry, like gravity, is a subtle energy and converts our lovers, our brothers, our sisters, our children, and their children's children's children into a splinter of the truth we spat out because we saw the red wheelbarrow and it invoked a sense of wonder and thunder within the poet's dreams. Rise up. Rise up. Rise up and let your words unleash real, true, universal power to elevate the revolution, to power love and pain and guilt and joy, and the occasional memory of things we wish we'd done or wish we hadn't. Tear down the false idols, stand at the barricades, and lead the parades of emancipation for every black, white, red, brown, man, woman, non-binary, gay, transgender, bisexual, lesbian, queer, liberal, conservative, and spread your mind seed to the world, to the universe, so that even if bad men and madmen destroy us all and all the planet one day, someone or something will hear your words and envy us, our passions, and our truths. It's true. In the beginning was the Word. Several years ago, I wrote a book called Ronan in the Temple of Aphrodite. It's because I consider me something of a romantic poet warrior, and a Ronin is a masterless samurai. So to me, a Ronin in the Temple of Aphrodite would be someone who believes in love but is not in a relationship. And I wrote several poems along that theme. But this is a new poem that wasn't in that book, but did make it into Tachyon. It's called Ronin Apocalypse. Oh, actually, Apocalypsis. My apologies. Eschatology ties my tongue. There are worse things than being a Ronin. Exile from the smile and pleasure of the region. His very presence defines you, empowers you. such that the brittle kata of the lost warrior remains only as a shadow, your heart beating only out of habit, the pain draining you until the leeches themselves choke out on the dust of a crushed, hushed heart. How long can it beat when the disembowelment is fait accompli? I only trust that God will judge with a kinder disposition my sins, or I am so fucked. But I digress. I would express my emotions with clarity and the charity of one who never lies or walks away from an accident. Even an enemy deserves the quick kill or a pardon. But I am torn, worn, scorned, and borne, bound and soundless into the presence of my own demons, who delight in the feast released in a single hapless incantation. Better the pen should have fallen from lifeless fingers than I should face the mockery of my chains. Better I should find penance in all manner of sacrifice than be cast into exile for the rest of my existence. Bleak, huh? No, I'm not going to read, what is that poem? I have too many poems. I can't remember all their names. The Darker Angels. Several years ago, a man wrote to me and he said, my son committed suicide this summer. I said, I'm sorry. He said, while I was going through his papers, I found a copy of this poem. And it's a copy of my poem, The Darker Angels. And it's a very, very dark poem. I said, do you think it had anything to do with it? He says, I don't know, but do I have your permission to reprint it in the book that I'm writing about my son's life? I said, yeah. If in any way I did anything to encourage that young man to take his life, I am truly sorry, because that's not my intention, ever, 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 ever. There are a few people I think the world would be better off without, but not necessarily people who I don't even know. Okay, let's get back to the poetry. Jesus, I mean the poems that I haven't read ever, and I don't want to be completely surprised every time by what I'm reading. Part of being the romantic poet of the internet and who I am, I'm told I'm a little bit of a flirt. I don't mean to be, because I think a flirt is sometimes, at least in the male sense, a bad thing. To me, historically, and I don't mean in all cases, I don't mean generally, women have flirted to get attention, to have someone say, you're interesting, you're attractive. Men flirt to get laid. And if they get shot out of the saddle, they go, ha ha ha, I was just flirting with her. But I have a lot of female friends, more female friends than male friends, and some of them would surprise you. Some of them are women of consequence. And, well, all women are of consequence, but I mean that you've heard of. And if you take a look at my gallery of models and book cover models and women I used in Amamancies, yes, I'm friends with several of them. And a few of them I've even been involved with. But that's another story, and this isn't TMZ. But here's a poem I wrote a few years back called Does Your Lover Know You Talk With Me? Just musing on that point, because sometimes I know these women are in relationships, and they may not like the fact that they're talking to me, especially after the guy reads a couple of their poems. I have had a couple boyfriends and husbands threaten me with violence for having spoken to their wife or girlfriend. Does your lover know you talk with me, the tears you cried over them and more, late at night when they can't see, as they tread on you, as if the floor were higher up in their purview, and you were just now passing through? Do you know how much that breaks my heart to know that they think love is rage, and you allow them for their part, for you conceive no way to gauge the truth when pain is all you've ever known, as part of love. You've never been shown that mercy is the passion's kiss when raising up your hopes for real and prayerfully, the arrows miss for lovers guard you with their steel and share with you all that is theirs and elevate you and your cares to heights of elegance and grace with tenderness and faith's report. They kiss the wounds and touch your face and never make of you their sport, for love is twisted by the bent and simplified when heaven's sent. Wow, that was awkward to read because I've not read it aloud ever in my life before. So there, I did you guys an honor. All right, we're going to move on from Tachyon to the book that came out just past year. Now, before we get on to Liaison, let's talk about my next book. This summer I'm coming out with a book called Eroica. Originally I was naming it for the dedication that Beethoven gave to one of his symphonies. And originally he was going to dedicate it fully to Napoleon, but Napoleon turned out to be a major ass, so he just tore out that part and just called it Eroica. I've capitalized the ERO to imply that there will be some erotic content in it because people expect that from me. Yeah, I'd like to write a completely G book, and I probably will. Actually, I've written a couple. They just haven't been published yet. But people expect a little bit of raciness from me, and that's okay. People have asked if Eroica is for one particular person. It is. It is for my constant companion and friend, my constant collaborator and friend, Maria Andriichuk, who is right now taking care of her mother in Ukraine, hoping the Russians don't decide to blow up their village. So we're in daily contact. I adore the shit out of her. And yes, 5 years ago, I actually suggested getting married. I don't much like derisive laughter, but we've stayed friends, and we still talk a great deal, and we work together a great deal. I understand her reasons, and I, if not approve, at least accept them. So anyway, this book, Eroica, is for you, Maria, no matter what happens between now and the summer. So now we're to the final book of the four that we're going to be doing in this. And this is Liaison. Liaison was a project I came up with to challenge myself. I love writing crowns of sonnets. That's 14 sonnets, with the last line of the first sonnet becoming the first line of the second sonnet, all the way through the 14th, where the last line of that is the first line of the first. But then you make the heroic crowns of sonnets, and that's where you put a 15th, often called the diadem, at the end. And it's made up of the first line of all the other sonnets in that crown. I know people who are completely blown away trying to make them. They're not that hard. Drop me a note sometime and I'll explain to you the secret way to make it a little easier. But I decided to challenge myself. I knew I had a lot of material backed up in my preconscious. So I literally sat down and I said, I'm going to do this in 1 month. So in July of 2021, I spat out Liaison. And it was a little racier than I expected it to be. I even put a parental advisory sticker on the back of it. But it is 225, is that right? 225 sonnets. And they're interlocked as the way I've described it. And that noise you just now are starting to hear is my cat Ariel, who has been sick lately. And she sometimes wanders around the house and starts making noise. And I apologize for her. She doesn't mean to be rude. And she doesn't want anybody to come help her. She just wants to express the fact, I feel bummed. So, I'm going to read the first set of sonnets, the first crown. And this one's called Pantheon, which is kind of weird because Pantheon was the name of my first book. But let us begin at the beginning, shall we? The first sonnet is called Ghost of a Chance, Half Dead but Bled Enough. And the title of each sonnet is the first line of each sonnet. That's not required, but I just did that to keep it simple. Ghost of a chance, half dead but bled enough to demonstrate the fluids of a youth, spilled, kissed, with acolyte's reverence, tough to measure, easy to treasure. The proof of warm wine is in the pleasure released in shadowed hallways and afternoon shade that scarce reveals the luminescent beast stalking our daydreams. Walking in parade under Brian's impassive gaze, union that binds and breaks as we dare to partake in a sullen and joyful communion to sanctify our innocence and wake up all sleeping saints. Our sanctification to feed altars of the alteration. For the second one, to feed altars of the alteration. See? To feed altars of the alteration, we shed sackcloth and ash, flash and damper to drive deep and sleep no more. Frustrations itself frustrated, mated impure and yet to unholy consecration, as this we do in remembrance of life, promised in two-dimensional fictions that told us more, and sweaty afterlife giggled about like naughty schoolchildren with a secret that they think they alone know about, while the angels gossip then bless us anyway. Every star and stone are secret. My feelings for you will bluff the goddesses, and yes, the lesser stuff. Number 3. The goddesses, and yes, the lesser stuff. The goddesses, and yes, the lesser stuff such as angels and imps, limp marathons that race us to the horizons. Your rough breathing is all the inspiration I need. Yawns as far away from this moment than thought of more rational things, the eclectic that lights the skies and your thighs caught and taut like a spider's web. The cataleptic dreams immolated into the actions of a lover. Birthing words for later, the amniotic fluid of passion's factions. Immortal and adamantine traitor our true natures. Natural prophecy of fifth material. Obligation. Number 4. Of fifth material obligation. Of fifth material obligation to be true to the blue-burned galactic, where was born the trace elements in sun after sun, until the trick became inevitable. Our wise lies bubbling over in a witch's bright brew, fictional friction, and diction of cries that echo in hearts and souls to renew the Trouvar's truth to new generations of lovers, that are even now on path to orbits under the obit, says run that was more of a meander. The math reduced to simplest terms, others retreat to a blue world without real fire to heat. Number 5. To a blue world without real fire to heat. To a blue world without real fire to heat, cowards retreat. But I might die tonight, and am spiraling towards the center, sweet where you lay with me in caution's delight. Flowers and powers are for this magic, and we are immortal for a moment or two, as we celebrate the tragic truth that there are coins to be spent and sent in messages to future and present, denials of yesterdays that grow pale as we tell the stories behind the recent reckonings, as we cannot bear the grail forever. We drink deeply great sweet kegs, sweet lips and slender hips that beg the dregs. Number 6. Sweet lips and slender hips that beg the dregs. Sweet lips and slender hips that beg the dregs, find in me an enthusiasm high on your beauty and the barter, and beg for one more moment, one more hour, to try as we might to hold back the universe with our hunger and desires, the fires blaze to our own immolations. Blinding God and all angels to an ascendant gaze that finds a flicker of sanity, of unity, that would dare survive strange and notorious in the flesh, but immortal in word, spat, whispered by swain and intent glorious to love gods for God. A part-formed conceit to be transfigured into more complete. Number 7. To be transfigured into more complete. Check something real fast. Cool. To be transfigured into more complete dreamers, we must dream as we lay, awake to take sustenance in our savage sweet surrenders and victories. Hills we take and valleys we taste in explorations of conquered territories, advising mercy and restraint as we paint stations of our own cross, and in sacred risings from tombs of our own blasphemic mutterings, forgiven for our enthusiasms, trespass of skin and sin, and offerings given in sacrifices in spasms that burn these moments, ritual that begs idolatry, balsa to stone, long legs. 8. Idolatry, balsa to stone, long legs. Idolatry, balsa to stone, long legs, tentacles of an elegant kraken, dragging me down to a beauty that begs all previous understandings, a zen of tender passions that belies the words of all I had ever read, bland bread fed in crumbs, as if to hungry beasts and birds to placate, but not nourish with truths, said only in the least honest and ornate manner possible. The Poitiers court made sport of by shy minstrels who would fade us all to shades of grey. You know the sort. Those who would belie and deny the dance on which stands generations of romance. Number 9. Number 9. Number 9. On which stands generations of romance. On which stands generations of romance, the monuments of this moment, the thought that somehow the divine is wine to chance on perfect sip while in cold cages caught by the facade. The charade, this life's shade, made for us in an approximation of what we were led to expect. Cascade and the serenade of the peddler's fiction. We buy, as we are used, to a nothing that strips away the beauty of your smile. Every bit as nervous as mine. We bring our earnest doubts, and will share for a while our true desire, anticipating dawn and the dance of the decades yet uncertain, gone. The dance of the decades yet uncertain, gone. To you this may be words, but to me these are many, many, many memories run together. So it's a little challenging. The dance of the decades yet uncertain, gone, is transient doubt that we may yet not find the missing pieces to the puzzles on which we would stake our souls and bind our blind visions of beauty in the universe where flowers wither and die, and we cry like lost children in the cold, cold curse of the isolation. And as we scry the other side, another side still fades, and our hearts are damned to turn to gray, like tasteless communion wafers, and blades carve bloodless flesh for the whims and the worms in the instant silence alone, by chance, before we contemplate in mystic's trance. Number 11. Before we contemplate in mystic's trance. Before we contemplate in mystic's trance the nature of our pleasure, our treasure discovered, uncovered, recovered, chance playing fair with us for once, I measure the distance from the edge of sanity. I have traveled in more moments. Confess false idols I have taken, vanity commanding and corrupting into less than the worthiest of the heart's wishes, saved from twisted thoughts and mislaid daydreams that set upon me and sought militias of passion, of demons and dark thoughts, to best the themes of passion and prayers before I was gone. The oracle's perfect kiss set upon. The oracle's perfect kiss set upon, number 12. The oracle's perfect kiss set upon, young lovers, healing the terrible scars we buried, we carried, malign and spawn of festering sorrows, the proto-stars we must transcend to be more than debris of the bleak battlefields of awareness, where virtue is a bangle bought in 3 fragments to decorate our nakedness. Too far afield we wandered before now, and now is when and where and how we find that we are not simple machines that bow to the brutality of fate. Unkind, not as we have been bent, it is our right. Us to feast in red and white through the night. Number 12. No, number 13. Us to feast in red and white throughout the night. Us to feast in red and white throughout the night. Us to find fit fittings to our desires. Fires finding better fall than down, our sight returning in what unity requires. We are no longer twain lost, tragic souls, but merged halves of a Genesis fusion. Our nature is not rude solitude, coals burning in our skulls, seek an inclusion in joy and peace, the release of sorrows as tomorrow seeks to break us, make us just another chalk outline in furrows left by the Jagannath cart to take us down and leave little remains. So we fight, religion rediscovered in delight. 14. Religion rediscovered in delight. Religion rediscovered in delight. Oh, you like this one, Ariel. Religion rediscovered in delight. You are perfect image of my rapture. You are my goddess. I am acolyte. And I will go where you will and capture stars in jars and be at peace with our time we share when we care or dare or make prayers with our bodies and our hearts, reason, rhyme, and the persistence of your voice that dares to call you mine without hesitation, when I would assent and without relent in deeper meander of fate. I shun all that I was and wished, will not repent for the turn of the dice, daring rebuff, ghost of a chance, half dead but blood enough. And finally, the diadem. Ghost of a chance, half dead, but bled enough. Ghost of a chance, half dead, but bled enough to feed altars of the alteration, the goddesses and yes, the lesser stuff of fifth material, obligation to a blue world without real fire to heat sweet lips and slender hips that beg the dregs to be transfigured into more complete idolatry, balsa to stone, long legs on which stands generations of romance, the dance of decades yet uncertain, gone before we contemplate in mystic's trance the oracle's perfect kiss set upon us to feast in red and white through the night, religion rediscovered in delight. And that, my friends, is the book Liaison. You may think it looks like quintessence, but quintessence is purple. This is indigo. It's complicated. Anyway, I thank you for enduring or just coming back on or whatever. I had a blast. It's late. I'm going to go to bed shortly. I want to thank all the people who contributed to this. I also wish to take 30 seconds to say, if there's anything you can do to help Ukraine or the Ukrainian people, do it. This is a travesty. This is an inhumanity. This is a series of war crimes piled upon one another. Tens of thousands of men, women, and children slaughtered. Entire cities laid waste to. This is not some celebrity slaps another celebrity BS. This is life. There are people losing their lives and being transformed by the changes it brought. Get involved. Ask questions. Speak your voice. Contribute money or other things as you can. My name is William F. DeVault. I'm the romantic poet of the internet and the U.S. National Beat Poet Laureate Emeritus. You have a great day, a great night, and a great life.